Hi, welcome back to Bava Kama Pei Gimel Amud Bet, starting from the two dots near the bottom of the Amud. New answer to the question of Amai. Tanya Rabbi Dustai ben Yehuda Omer. We learned in a Breitza, Rabbi Dustai ben Yehuda says, Ayin Sachat Ayin Mamon. Ayin Sachat Ayin means monetary compensation. Ata Omer Mamon, Oino Ela Ayin Mamash. Do you really say that it's Mamon, or maybe it is an actual eye? Amarta haresha haita eino shel ze gdola ve'eino shel ze ktana. So you would say, what if one person's eye is big and one person's eye is small? He'achani koreh ayin tachat ayin. How would I then read in it, or how would I uphold the pasuk then as ayin tachat ayin? If one person's eye is big and one person's eye is small, I'm never going to have an exact ayin tachat ayin exchange. And since mamash could not work in that case of the big eye and small eye, which is probably going to be most cases, ayin tachat ayin couldn't possibly be mamash. The Gemara responds, V'chi tema, kol ki hai shakel minei mamona. If you were to say, in all such situations, just take money from him, haTorah amra, mishpat echad yeh lachem. But the Torah said there should be one rule. There should be one rule for you, just one rule for you. Mishpat hashaveh lekulchem, the same rule for all of you. So in other words, the Gemara says maybe you would say, well, okay, in the big eye, small eye cases, we'll do money, and in all other cases, we'll do mamash. But you're not allowed to do that. Mishpat echad yeh lachem means there can only be one type of punishment, and if it can't be mamon for everybody, then it can't be mamon, and if it can't be mamash for everybody, then it can't be mamash. So since it can't be mamash in the big eye, small eye cases, it must not be mamash at all. This statement supports the arguments in the Gemara. It gives something that you might have said this in response to the Breitza. You might have argued this against the Breitza, but the Gemara actually is supporting the Breitza. Amri. So the response would be, my kusha, what's the problem? Dilma nahora shakil minei, nahora amarachmana nishkol minei. Perhaps sight is what he took from him, and sight is what the Torah says should be taken from him. In other words, perhaps ayin tachat ayin mamash doesn't mean an eyeball for an eyeball, but rather sight for sight. Di'ilote mahachi, because if you don't say that, katan sheharaget hagadol, v'gadol sheharaget hakatan, hichi kadlinan lei. A small person who killed a big person, or a big person who killed a small person, how could you kill the perpetrator? HaTorah amra, mishpat echad yeh lachem. The Torah says you can only have one law for all of them, one consequence in all cases. Mishpat hashaveh lekulchem. A sentence, a judgment which is equal for everyone. In other words, if you play the big eye, small eye game, you have to play the big person, small person game when it comes to inflicting capital punishment, and of course that would be a silly thing. Ala neshama shakil minei. Rather, a life is what he took from him. Neshama amar rachmana nishkol minei. And so a life is what the Torah says we take from him, meaning that is how capital punishment works. One person kills someone, so we kill that person. Hachanami nahora shakil minei, nahora amar rachmana nishkol minei. So to here, eyesight is what was taken from him, and eyesight is what the Torah says we take from him in return. So this confirms the idea that when the Torah says ayin tachat ayin, if you wanted to interpret that as mamash, it would be mamash eyesight for eyesight, not mamash an eyeball for an eyeball. And therefore, Rabbi Dustai's case, Rabbi Dustai's attempt to show that mamash couldn't possibly work is not a valid attempt. We've undermined Rabbi Dustai's argument. Okay, we'll pause here.